Hello everyone, I'm Mike Adamski, and today we're going to be talking about how to create a simple video, a very straightforward video, based off of lecture content provided by a subject matter expert. So in a nutshell, a very quick and hopefully simple way to take lecture content and convert it into a more visual format. On the screen you can see a couple of the tools that we'll be using. We of course have the actual lecture from the subject matter expert. We're going to be using Getty videos or Getty images in this particular exercise. And of course, we'll be using our articulate storyline, which you can see here. So first thing I can say is that you want to start off by having some sort of template for yourself. Obviously, if you want to start fresh, you can. This is a template that I have been using. And again, you can see I've already gone through and done just a very few things here. Just to save a little bit of time in the beginning. But basically all I've done is I've taken the lecture of the title and I've taken different section headings such as the title of this lecture here or the section here. And then also this particular lecture is talking about different phases of evidence-based teaching. And so I've taken those and created a section out of those. And again, all I've done is just really renamed my template size here to these different phases of evidence-based learning, a conclusion page, and a reference page. The content on it itself from my template is from a completely different course. So as I go through this, you're going to see content that doesn't match up. I'm of course just replacing it with the current content from the subject matter expert lecture that you just saw. One thing that I realized I did not do yet is I need to copy this title here, which is the title, is the title of the actual scene. And you'll also want to go into your player here if you have the player visible. You'll want to go in and make sure that you also change that title here. And any other settings you want to do there, there's plenty of different things. And what's nice is with the preview, you can kind of see how this is going to end up looking. And that's what we're going to do here. So I have that all set up now, and we are ready to jump in. So again, this is based off of a previous video. So all of this stuff, if I were to hit play, it's not going to match up. It's completely from a different course. And so one of the first things we're going to be doing, of course, is using the text to audio converter. And so if I pull up my lecture again, what I'm going to do is copy a couple things here. First of all, we're going to just copy probably this first paragraph. Again, this is a very unscripted. I'm doing this just kind of live as I make this here. So we will inevitably probably hit some bumps in the road here, and that's okay. I think that's part of the learning process. So again, that's our text to audio converter. That's a crash that happens a lot that I've learned you can sometimes just ignore for better or worse. And let's see here. I'm also just going to take the title of that lecture. And also, so we lost our, you can see here, we've hit our first roadblock here. With that error, we lost the audio conversion there. But we'll just go grab it again really quick. And I'm just going to take this first paragraph for now. We'll get into that list of 4. That will probably be on the same slide, but for now, let's just start small. And we'll start with just the basic parts we need. So there we go. What I'm also doing on the screen is just checking for anything that would be like parenthetical or like citations and stuff that obviously would read really weird. I'll show you what we do with those if we do get them, but basically you can kind of toggle this update closed caption on and off. Of course, I want this to be on because I want it to generate the closed captions this first time, but sometimes I'll go back later on and I'll delete the parentheticals or citations, but leave it in the closed captioning. So in that case, I would uncheck that because I still want them to be seen on screen if we're going to actually show the text, for instance, but I don't want the narrator to read it, right? So I still want it to match up, but I don't need them reading the citations because sometimes those don't come through very well. So now we've updated our audio for at least this very first part of the video. And the next thing I'm doing basically is I'm just looking at my title. So we have a title of the lecture and we have the title of the first section. These are different. And so in this template, the very first 5 seconds you can see are actually just our logo here. So our branding, very simple branding here that we just put in for the first 5 seconds. But then really the first thing that we're doing is we're going to be taking the titles here and just adding them in. And again, there's a placeholder for each of these. So if you don't want to type everything, you can just copy and paste. Okay, so, and this first title here, they're going to appear in the exact same spot. But as you see, even though there's tons of layers here everywhere, if you just click on that particular item, and you'll see sometimes these are having problems. Like I actually want to update this one that comes on the timeline first. But when I click in the box, it's switching to this one. If that's an issue, just turn off the visibility. Now it'll only show me the one I need. So I'm just going to take that text, I'm going to change that title to that, add in our R, and just copy this because I need it again. And that's also going to be going onto our title here. So there's another title that you're going to see. And again, every template's going to be a little bit different. I'm just kind of working in the template that I have. And just keep an eye when you do paste things in Articulate. Sometimes you can see it didn't actually paste in the same formatting, the centering and whatnot. So I have those all changed. And then the next little title we're going to change is just the first part of the lecture. Get rid of this extra space here. Okay. And now this one, I'll need to turn the visibility back on. And we're just going to update that one like that. And just fix our capitalization. Okay. Now this one's a little bit too big, so again, not a huge deal. What I'm doing in this template is just kicking down the size of the text until it all fits. There we go. So there you go. So if I play this, you'll see, you're going to see the last second of our branding.
Spirit of inquiry of a nurse educator. Evidence-based teaching in the spirit of inquiry.
So you can see there, now we just have the basic parts, and I haven't even lined this up. It actually lined up pretty well, but I could probably bump this one back. And again, I'm just looking, as you see the highlighted blue, I'm looking at the audio file in the very top because that's telling me what's being said. And of course, it's the title of the lecture being said. There's a natural pause, which you can visually see on screen, which is very helpful. And then is the first section title. So those are lined up pretty well. Again, I didn't really need to move those other than I probably just need to extend this one out. So we'll do that like that. Okay, cool. Now this lecture, again, this is just going to continue to read that particular spot. So the next thing I'm doing is I'm just kind of looking at the content here and just determining what do I want to put in. And so it's talking about faculty will need to display a spirit of inquiry about the teachings and learning practices. So there's a few things. There's kind of like I wouldn't necessarily call it a definition, but they kind of have a little buzzword that the SME has deemed as important. And so what I'm going to do at this part is I'm going to probably take this and just make a little textual slide out of it that I also have templated. So just trying to decide where I want it to stop, right? So let's just do this. A lot of times I've found it can be a pretty straightforward thing just to kind of chop the paragraph in half. And so the very first thing that they're going to see is going to be this. And it's going to be this, I'm sorry, that's the section title. It's going to be this actually. So, and I'll show you what this is here momentarily. So again, this is going to be our little text box. This will eventually pop up on the screen. So I'm just going to copy, I'm going to paste this in. Now I pasted all green because the first word from my template is actually the buzzword. I of course don't want it to be all green, so I'm just going to kind of work backwards here and put that back to white and not bolded. Everything else is good. And so I believe it was the spirit of inquiry is what they had called out. So I'm just going to bold that. I'm going to make it green. And again, obviously you'll have your own little style standards and whatnot, but so there's that. And it's as simple as that. So now all I need to do is just listen to determine when this is done reading. Oops. So as I click back onto my timeline, I can hit play.
Faculty will need to display a spirit of inquiry about their teaching and learning practices. When faculty have a spirit of inquiry, they are raising questions and examining existing teaching and learning practices. Faculty who have a spirit of inquiry are looking for creative ways to engage students in the learning process.
Okay, so you can see it stopped a little too early, so that's no big deal. We're just going to extend that out to, and again, I'm just kind of looking visually, just about there, and that's when the next part is going to happen, regardless of what that is. One thing I forgot to do is, for my template, I do need to change my background image, so I can show you how to do that really easily. So I'm going to use this one for this particular video, so they're just slightly different. And I'm just going to go ahead and align this. I will eventually crop some of this out, so we're not worried about the bottom as much. And I'm just going to crop this up to the size I need. should be pretty close. I just need to make sure it's centered here, so I should center it. 1 second here. I have a little cheat sheet that I use here for my dimensions, so that these appear on the screen the same way. And again, if you need to do any kind of manual editing to these, you can just uncheck that, and then it'll let you do that. So we're going to be 710, 1270 by 710, and then the positioning would be 5 and 5, and that should center it. Okay, so now that we're good on there, what I'm going to do just to save myself some time here is just paste this in to each of the other slides, and then as we get to those slides, we'll fix up that screen when we get to it. But basically, it's just kind of giving some uniformity, some kind of visual uniformity to this particular video, similar yet different to some of the other videos that we've used in this course. So now as I pasted that in, of course, that's appearing way up at the top in kind of a weird spot. I don't quite understand the exact order of how and why things are pasted into Articulate. I haven't figured that exactly out. But this is going to show until the end, which is fine. And I'm just going to delete the other one. It won't really matter because this other image, as long as there's no transparency, you would never see this one, but I would like to think that probably speeds up the editing and maybe the publishing and whatnot. So we're just going to delete that out. So yeah, so far we're pretty much through that, halfway through that first paragraph at this point. And so the next part is nurse and faculty look to improve their teaching. They use evidence-based resources. What I want to do with this one, I'm just going to throw a video in, right? And we have a Getty video library, and I'm just going to type in nursing education. And these are going to be a series of different videos here. And the next thing I'm actually going to look at, though, is just how much time do I have left on this slide. So we are good up to about 30 seconds or so. I got about 15. I like to leave a couple seconds at the end. So I got about 17 or so seconds left, we could say. So what I'm going to look for here, I'm going to go down and just filter this up to 17 seconds. And now that's going to just show me the different videos. And as I hover over these, you can kind of see. And I'm just looking for one that looks interesting, that would follow along with the content. Let's just see if it's calling anything in particular out. So there's a little bit of research going on. So like something like this would work. And that's 19 seconds. So that's going to be fine. So I'm going to download this video. And again, you'll need to subscribe to a video library. I definitely recommend Getty Images. It's been pretty darn good so far. So it's definitely something I would recommend if you're able to. If not, there's other libraries available, but Getty's been really, really good for us. And so, what I'm going to do now is just go back to Storyline. I'm going to insert that video. And if I just search by date modified, wherever you're saving those, that's going to be the most recent one you just downloaded. You don't have to worry about the confusing numbers. Now it's just a matter of lining up. Very first thing I'll tell you though is right click on that video clip and uncheck show until end. That will kind of create some weird laggy stuff where the video just kind of freezes, because if I just start clicking and dragging this, it extends the video and it suddenly becomes longer than 17 seconds, which of course you don't want. So all I need to do here is just kind of line this up with where that last screen ends, and it looks like it's right there. And so now I like to keep my audio at the top. So, so now, if I just click back, you'll see the transition here from the slide to the video.
Students in the learning process. As nursing faculty look to
there's a little bit of a lag, so
they use evidence-based resources. Faculty should.
So you're not seeing the video move, but it's still, as I loaded it in, it's still kind of like rendering the video in the background, is my understanding, but it'll start playing here in a second. There we go.
Look to improve their teaching. They use evidence-based resources. Faculty should complete research to support any changes in teaching. Faculty who use evidence-based teaching use research to advance their teaching strategies.
So that's it. And as I mentioned, I like to leave a couple seconds at the end. Oh, you know what? Let's undo that. So again, you want to manually drag the video, or else it's going to bump it down. And then I can now drag the end. And I don't need any branding at the end of this because I'm going to be transitioning into another slide, actually probably another layer, which will be that next paragraph. And again, that's just the flow that I found has worked. You may just want to continue this all in the same timeline. That's fine. Just for me, for editing, when you get into these longer paragraphs, it's kind of nice to just click into a different layer, and it kind of breaks it up. So I'm just double checking here to make sure we don't have anything that needs to be going away, but I think we're good because this is just going to transition. So this is going to show layer 1. This is a trigger that's already been made. But if you need to make a trigger, of course, you can do those here. And there's tons of different trigger options. There's probably tons of different YouTube videos already discussing how to do triggers, so I'll skip over that. But this one's basically just going to show layer when this timeline ends, and it's going to jump to this one next. So the only thing I really need to go and grab is our new background image that we grabbed, because I'm going to need to also drop that one onto here, and that's what we're doing here. So that's now in place, and we're just going to be continuing that. And get rid of this video because that's an old video, and we're going to just be continuing the lecture with that particular spot. So the next thing it's getting into, it's talking about this list here, the 4 phases of evidence-based learning, and then I'm going to be wrapping up that slide at this point after I do this part. So again, very first thing I'm going to do is just going to go in here. We're going to edit the text to speech. Now, here's a good example, right? So I don't really want the narrator to read this, but I'm going to leave it in when I first do it because I want the closed captioning to show it. So I'm going to do that. Now that's loaded into the closed captioning, which is exactly what I want. Hopefully we don't get a crash again. Now, I'm going to go in and just delete this because I don't want the narrator to read it, but I'm going to uncheck the update closed captioning because I still want it to show. So what I just set it to do, I said, narrator, don't read that. Closed captioning, don't worry about what I just did here. Ignore it. And so that's what it's going to do. So now it's updated that, and it's going to be a pretty straightforward thing here. What I need to do is go back and just grab my little text box here because I'm going to need that again. I'm going to drop that text box in, and I just need to listen really quick to see when they start talking about that list. It's probably right here.
Space teaching. 1. Questioning education.
Okay, so yeah, that's going to be pretty good. So going back to the lecture now. Okay, so we are going to copy this text again, and we're going to now drop it into that text box that we just pasted in. And formatting is a little bit goofy, but that's okay. And what we want to do is we want to make sure that it's set up in this particular way, where we have each of the different quote-unquote paragraphs, really just sections of this text box, as their own individual item. My template's set up to do this automatically, but the way you can do this is if you just click in here, and as long as everything's, again, like sectioned off as either a paragraph or like with bullets or numbers or any kind of auto formatting like that, you're going to be able to select everything, go into effects, and you want to click on this by paragraph. I've already done this, so I won't click it. But if you click that, that's going to have everything come in one at a time. Now, if you do nothing after that, you won't notice a difference because as you can see here in the timeline, all 5 of these quote-unquote paragraphs are going to come in at the same time. But you can also slide these around individually, right? And so we know she talks about 1 there. I'm just looking at the visual. I'm guessing that's where she says 2. Again, looking at the visual of the audio above, I'm guessing that's where she says 3. And 4 is probably right here. And so without even really having to look, that should be lined up okay. Now the only issue here is my formatting's rather goofy. So oops, let's just clean this up here so it's a little bit easier to read. And my text is too big, so I'll just shrink this down. What I'm actually looking at when you use like a curved shape especially, you know, you want to make sure you don't have anything that's kind of like in this corner. Like if this was a line left, you'd be like, oh, it's pretty good, but that corner can really create some issues, right? So we're going to either scale this down or we're going to, and I'll probably do something like that. I don't like the green. Let's go back to white. So couple ways. You could keep this really, really tight and keep the font bigger, obviously. So it's really just up to you. I think I will go something like this, but I'm just going to shorten, just slightly decrease that. Yeah, and I think I'll put a little space in between them. There's enough room on the screen to do that. So again, however you want to do it. Again, double check everything. You may notice that these numbers did not take on the same shape, or sorry, the same font size. So just double check that. There we go. Now they're all the same. So again, there's definitely some little quirky things. Now those all look to be 22. So that's fine. So now as I play this, oops, let's, in order to play, you got to click on the actual timeline. We should see that build happening here.
Described 4 phases of evidence-based teaching. 1.
Oops. Okay. Some reason these things got all out of whack here, but again, they're not difficult to readjust, but again, just one of the little, I guess, goofy parts. Oh, and you know what? See what it did? Because I deleted, it's looking at it all now as one thing. So, okay, apparently it has to have those spaces in between. So let's back out of there. Okay, now they're back to normal. So we're not going to mess with that. We're just going to change the font size down so that it all fits. I can probably do that at least. Oops. And as you do this, you're just kind of keeping an eye on those layers, and they're still there. So that will work. Again, just for this example, you can always obviously continue to tweak with it, but they are offline again a little bit here though, so I do have to go back in and adjust. So there's the one, and see we lost our 4th one. But again, part of Articulate is just knowing the methods to the madness. Just being patient, taking your time with it. I'm just keeping an eye on this 4th one to make sure I can still, so it's still there. We're just going to have to go with that. I will make this just slightly smaller there. I can do like 22 or something, that's fine. And I'll just bold this. So there, now we still have all the layers, and it looks like they're still in the right places. The other thing you'll need to do is just make sure that these all extend to the end, and again I like to go a couple seconds beyond. So I'm just extending all of these. They're going to start at different times, but they'll all stay on the screen to the end here. And the other way you can do this is just, you could have selected all these and just said show until end. That's going to obviously extend it out, but I'm going to be adjusting the total length here to about 29 seconds anyway. Okay, so now we should just see a nice build happening here on the screen.
Orman described 4 phases of evidence-based teaching. 1. Questioning educational practices and identifying the need for evidence to guide teaching. 2. Searching for research studies and other evidence on educational practices. 3. Evaluating the quality of the evidence. 4. Deciding whether the finding applies to one's program, courses, students, and content in which one is teaching.
Alright, so again, you could see the different layers that were coming up as she talked. They were coming up one at a time.
Questioning educational practices and identifying the need for evidence to guide.
You know, you could easily do that while really just looking at the audio timeline. It was rather easy to see.
Evidence. 4. Deciding whether the finding applies to one's program, courses, students, and content in which one is teaching.
So there you go. And again, so, you know, with this particular lecture, it just continues on like that. I mean, I could keep going with this, but obviously what I'll be doing is for each of these different slides, I'm going to be doing the same thing. I'm going to be creating the different phases for this particular one, kind of a conclusion area, a reference page, and then, you know, just putting branding at the end, which again is just loaded in here, at least for mine. After the references show up, you'll see the branding show up here. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong one. So again, 5 seconds of references, 5 seconds of branding. But again, everyone's video, everyone's template's a little bit different, but what we're starting to see, obviously, is a series of videos, or a series of slides, I should say, just based off of the lecture content. If that's all you needed, you can probably stop watching this video at this point. I'm going to continue on and just keep making this, and I'm going to finish this video. And we're about 30 minutes in or so, a little bit less than that. And let's continue on, and I'll keep working. But again, it's not really going to be probably a whole lot of new process at this point. But if you're curious to see what this looks like, and then also the finished product, or things about like how to publish these, how to put these on Review 360, we will be doing that. So let's take a look, and we'll continue on, and I will finish this video, and we'll see how it turns out. All right, so I'm going back to my lecture here, 1 second. And this will probably be pretty text heavy, these here. Again, with the video subscription, I mean, we have a team of people using these videos, and we have a set number of them. And so, you know, part of our strategy is like, well, use the videos where they're appropriate, but don't go too video crazy all the time, because it's, you know, sometimes going to create issues of, you know, using too many videos, and sometimes videos can get a little bit repetitive for students. So having text on a screen is not terrible. It's still, in my opinion, a step above using something like just a narrated, or, you know, like a slideshow, PowerPoint. I mean, there's still a little bit of different things you can do. And again, this is in a very, very simple format. So when we say this is a very simple thing you can do, understand that there's a lot more you can do. You can build interactivity into these. You can build scenario pieces where you have an avatar who's walking through these different scenarios and like living and breathing within the actual activity. But for this is really just the simplest way of converting a written lecture into a video format, and that's what we're doing here. So, okay, so I have my text copied, and what I'm going to just do is just drop in the text for this first phase. We are calling this, I'm just going to steal the title from the slide because I need to update my template here in a few places. So there's one, there's the other, and these aren't on the screen at the same time, so there's a reason that these are two. So the video is going to start off just by flashing this up with our image in the background. You can see all this in the timeline, and once you get more familiar with just kind of video timelines, you'll be able to look at this visually. You won't have to, you could do some of this almost like blind in a way. You'll just know like, oh yeah, okay, that's going to go, this title is going to read here for about 2 seconds, and it's while they're saying this first phase of evidence-based teaching, which we haven't updated yet. But that's going to essentially what that does. So as I go into here, I will update this text here. So I need that. And notice this wasn't checked because my template before, I probably took out some sort of like reference, right, or some sort of citation. But I do need to update that. And then we just need to grab that text again. And I'll right click, I'll just go back in, and essentially we're going to edit this. I do want it to say that, and I want it to say that, and I do want it to update closed captioning because that's our little section. So now we have, you know, probably, I don't know, 30 seconds or so, 25 seconds of audio. You can see that title takes a little bit longer to read, obviously, so we're just going to extend that out, which means now these will be delayed a bit. They'll start there. That image and background are fine. So now you'll see, here's what it's going to look like.
First phase of evidence-based teaching. During the first phase of evidence-based teaching, novice faculty realize the importance of using evidence to support teaching practices. Nurses understand the value of using evidence in practice and begin to question the practices used in classes. At this phase, faculty are learning the teaching practices that are available and determining how to incorporate activities into the course.
Simple enough, right? So that one's done. So what I've just learned it kind of visually helps just to leave a few seconds of like nothing at the end before, because I'm using auto transitions, right? So when this timeline ends, it's going to jump. By the way, if I go back and look here, right, we talked about how this layer, when this first slide ends, it jumps to the next layer, but this one, when this timeline ends, jumps to the next slide. And that's what's happening here. And since we're not going to have any other layers here, this one's just going to jump to the next slide again. So again, very, very straightforward, leaving a few seconds at the end. 32 fonts kind of been my default, so that looks good. And the last thing I'm just looking at is whether the SME doesn't have any kind of like buzzwords pulled out here. So again, of course, you could use your own judgment. If you wanted to highlight certain things, you could, but for this one, we're just going to keep moving along. This is going to be just about the same slide. So what I'm actually going to do is just replace these templated ones I had, and I'm just going to paste in a couple more of these because we need 4 of them. And then of course, because these titles will be visual, at least in my template for the students, I'm just going to change that to second. I'm going to change this one to third. And you can turn these off where they wouldn't be visual to the student, but it is nice to kind of give them some at least basic navigation options. So, as you can imagine, these are going to go pretty quick, hopefully. Famous last words in instructional design. But so the second phase, we're just going to copy that. And now here you can see, right, this is a little bit too big, so we're just going to scale that down. I'm just checking my corner, and the corner fits just fine. And again, it's a bit messy, right? There's a lot of stuff happening on the screen, but when you click on the item you're using, as long as there's nothing on top of it that's blocking it, you'll be able to see it. And as I click off, different things will reappear. If I click on this, it's going to show it to me a little bit cleaner and things like that. You're not seeing, we don't have too many layers here on top of each other, so it's not too bad. So of course I need to change these. We'll need to come down on the font size a little. Probably here as well. Nope. So that's good. And then the last thing is just updating our text to speech, and then we'll set up the timing. So and I'm almost wondering if I just get rid of the titles here. Yeah, I'm going to just do it like this. So this one's going to actually, we can just say show always, and I'm just checking. See, one thing to keep in mind in a storyline is that it sometimes has a mind of its own, where it'll start resizing the length of your slides and whatnot, so just be careful with that. But what I'm doing here, I'm just going to get rid of that little transition because it's a little bit redundant with it showing up again. So again, just a little, and then also I'll update this audio because we're not going to use this line because it's pretty much set in the next part there. So that'll update this. Of course, we'll get a little bit shorter on this slide, and I'm just going to resize that down. Again, just a couple seconds usually works well. So now we have the first, we have the second one done minus our resizing, which looks good. And moving on to the third. And actually what I'll do, just because we tweaked a few things there, is I'll paste another one in here. So now this becomes our third. This becomes our fourth. So again, pretty straightforward. And again, we could be doing similar things where maybe we're loading in a video to show and that kind of thing. And obviously those options exist, but for this activity we're just keeping it pretty straightforward. We'll probably do some video stuff at the end when we do the little conclusion part. But yeah, I mean, they're as easy as that, right? If you have things templated the way you want, again, your template may look completely different than mine. That's totally cool. So the last one of these phases then is this fourth phase. So we're going to grab that, drop that in here, update this. And I always just give it a quick look just to make sure there's no parentheticals happening, things like that. Missed our period here. Also just want to double check that I updated the text on this one. I forget if I did. Yeah, so that's third. We're good there. And same thing, just timing it up. So, if you left it like this, it wouldn't break anything, but because I have auto transitioning, the student would be sitting around for 10 seconds. And there's really nothing else they would be able to do unless you had like the actual navigation built in, which sometimes people do, sometimes you don't, but I just like to have it auto. They can always click back, especially if you have the navigation present. They can click back and look at those different things. By the way, probably a good time to save, right? Always make sure you're saving. It does take a while to save, but what I've found is just as I'm transitioning into kind of like the next thing I'm thinking about, I can start looking at this paragraph. That's already done saving. This software will crash on you sometimes. So let's see. And there's lots of other things you can obviously be doing with this, as I mentioned. I mean, I've been using Adobe Premiere Pro, for instance. I'll take video clips from Getty. I will shorten them, or I shouldn't say shorten them, but I will sometimes put them in slower motion so that they take up more time. So if I have like a 17-second clip that I really love, but I need it to be 20 seconds, I can put that down to say like 85% speed in Adobe Premiere Pro, export the video, and then load it in the exact same way, just by doing what we did earlier, right? So, but again, that all requires having extra software. Premiere Pro it's neither free nor cheap. And so just something to think about. But again, there's many tools. Powtoons, I mean, you can probably load in Powtoon videos and that sort of thing. So assuming it's all legal, I haven't looked into like can you load in Powtoons, for instance, into Storyline. So your mileage may vary there, so just be careful. So I set up this last part here as a conclusion side. One of the things we just need to, I'm going to just grab this image because we've already resized it. And I pasted in, if you remember earlier, we pasted these images in, but this is already resized, so we'll just throw it in there. And I can now delete the old one that was there, just in case it bogs it down. So we're into this little conclusion area. We can probably just do this as one. So let's just grab that, and then we've already done the references. So I'm essentially done with this, but I'll leave it up just in case. So we're into this conclusion section. Actually, you know what? I don't want to actually use the text. Let's just update our audio. We're going to put a video here. So let's see. Once the faculty determines the use of the study, determines to use the study, they will evaluate the effectiveness of the intervention that he used. So it's talking about faculty, the spirit of inquiry. So again, it's going to be a pretty similar look and feel to the videos earlier. What's nice thing about Getty too is, like, let's just say you wanted to continue this kind of look and feel. As you click into some of these videos, they'll show you, like, there's already videos that are in this exact same series. So like if I wanted to really, really look how it did earlier, this is just a nice little tool. So these are going to be like a lot of the same actors kind of doing some of the similar things, but oftentimes it can be different things. So like here's one that's a little bit more intuitive, I guess, where she's holding this brain model. But again, I need to go back and look at how much time we're talking about here. And so I do want to say, oops, sorry, wrong thing here. I'm going to just add in a let's just do that. Now you can see these titles obviously are wrong. I got to do that earlier, so we'll just do that now. And so here's a good example, right? I said the layers, like, it's really hard to read and it's really confusing. What am I looking at? If you just click on it, it'll focus it for you, as long as there's nothing else above it. And so we're going to have it like that. Just shorten this slightly to about right there, which means these will get slightly lengthened. Okay, and so actually we don't need that. We're not going to use that. So, which means technically we're not even going to need this because the video is going to hide it. But we need about a good 40 seconds. So this might be a good example of where, let's see, where's my window at here? That might be a good example of, I can either look for 40-second clips, but those are sometimes hard to come by. And that's, however, you can see 17. But if I find one that's like, there's one that's 23. This one is also 23. That one's 26. This one kind of looks like some instruction going on, which I like. This one obviously does too. I kind of like this one. I think we might go with this one. So, but notice it's too short, right? But I will be using a different tool here. Now again, your mileage is going to vary because you may not have access to this, but I'm sure there's other tools. I have even probably Windows Movie Maker would let you edit at least like a clip length. It's something I've actually submitted to Articulate Storyline. I would love for them to add in a time stretch option where you can add in slow or fast motion to something. So anyway, but what I'm doing here, first off, I'm going to download, I just usually download the HD web because that's the dimensions of my slide perfectly. So I'm going to download this clip, knowing that it's really too short. Now again, of course I could throw in 2 clips, but just for the sake of simplicity here, we're just trying to save on the number of downloads here. And if I can keep this video to 2 downloads, that's cool. That will work. Let's see. Let's try to download it again here. There it goes. So we're going to save that one. Now, what I've done here in the background is I have loaded up Adobe Premiere Pro. Just put it on the screen here. And again, I have another little template here. You're getting some video delay there. And so, but what I've done here is, let me get that delay out of here. Oh, I moved the wrong window, that's why. That's the wrong window. You need to see, where's it at here? 1 second. I have so many things open. My computer is starting to fight me. There it goes. So this is what I meant to show you. You don't care about my streaming software. OBS, by the way, if anyone's interested. OBS, really open broadcast system or services. Very, very nice streaming tool. That's what you're seeing on the screen. I thought it was Adobe. It kind of looks like it. So I have just a very, very simple shell here in Adobe that I've created, which is just it's just a blank shell that's just formatted to the right sequence size and whatnot. It's nothing fancy. But what I'm going to do is just import that clip we just downloaded. And so, same thing, date modified, so it shows up at the top. And this is about as easy as it can get. So I'm going to drop it in here. It's now on our timeline. It's 28 seconds long. You can see here. As I zoom in, you can see the length. So, yeah, about 28 seconds. And that's what it said on the website. So 28 seconds, but we need it to be about 42 or 43 seconds, let's say. Okay, easy. So I'm going to just take that clip, I'm going to right click and go to speed duration. And it's just a matter of it's kind of some guesswork here. So let's see, it's going to be, I don't know, let's try 60%. So that put it to 47 seconds, so I could probably do like 65. Yeah, and you can see that changed it to about 43 seconds or so. So 43 seconds is good. Let's just go a little bit lower, just so we have a little bit of wiggle room. Yeah, 45 seconds. So that's it. So now I'm just going to export this video. And again, this is not an Adobe tutorial, so if you've never used Adobe and you're freaking out, you probably don't need to use Adobe to do this. It's nothing that, all I'm doing in this entire tool here is just slowing the video down. We've lengthened this clip from 28 seconds or whatever it was to 45 seconds. That's it. You could have just as easily downloaded a second video clip, probably. I don't need this anymore. I don't need to save that. So now I'm just going to import that video. It's saved with the same name, more or less. And it drops in place now. And, oh, you know what, before I even move it anywhere, remember to right click, uncheck that. Now I can move it around and it won't mess with my size. I technically don't even need these things, but it's fine. You can leave it there. But now you should see it. It's all going to look like this, just be in slow motion.
Conclusion. Once the faculty determines to use the study, they will evaluate the effectiveness of the intervention that they use to their student population. Faculty need to support student development and evaluation as they continue their spirit of inquiry. When faculty have developed their scholarship in teaching, they can begin to share their expertise with others. Faculty who share their experience with others are comfortable in their role. After faculty become comfortable with teaching initiatives that work well, they reflect on the experience and share with others to develop further knowledge. When faculty are comfortable with their role, they learn to become a scholar and complete further research to ensure continuous improvement.
Reason I highly recommend listening to those each time is, especially with kind of text narration that's being converted into, or I should say text that's being converted into narration, is you sometimes can get some weird translations happening. So like for instance, I was using the British accent one you heard there, and I had the word privacy in the text, and she was saying privacy. And that's not wrong or anything necessarily, but that's just not usually the English accent that we put on that word. So I had to go in and change it to, I had to spell it P-R-Y, so like privacy, right? At the same time, keeping the closed captioning intact, which was that little trick I showed you earlier, by clicking that toggle box on and off. So again, if I went into here, you could change it to privacy, right? P-R-Y, and then just uncheck that. It will keep the closed captioning then reading P-R-I for how we'd usually spell it, but you'd pronounce it the weird, the right way, but the weird typing way, if that makes sense. So just something else that it's always take your time and listen to these, right? Obviously, just as we proofread and things like that, and we clean up lectures, you should be proofing your own videos, you should be watching, you should be listening, again, making sure that things line up properly. It's very, very simple stuff. It's kind of video editing 101. Just something to just keep in mind there. It's just like anything else. You should always be proofing your work with that stuff. So anyway, this is now again going to transition into our references slide. Or I should say references slide. Sorry about that. And that one's simple enough. It's already set up. I've already copied the one reference. And it's just going to show it for 5 seconds. And then it's going to show our branding for 5 seconds. And this video is done. I'm going to save it. And now I'm going to show you how to publish. I'm going to show you a couple ways to publish. There's a number of different ways you can publish. What I'll be doing is publishing to Review 360, which is a really nice tool with Articulate that lets you share your pieces, your Articulate storyline published files with shareholders. So whether you want to show it to a department chair, whether you want to show it to a manager, the subject matter expert, your significant other, whatever. It just gives you an opportunity to put those pieces up visually to be seen. So again, one of the first things, I showed this earlier in the video, but before you kind of go through and publish, just make sure you have your player settings, and this is what it's going to look like, right? So anything from like, hey, there's a typo here, to maybe I don't want this navigation showing, maybe I don't want closed captioning to be an option. All of these things can be changed, and they're all dynamic changes. So like if I click closed captioning, right, it disappears. So there's tons of different stuff here. Search, if you had a humongous project and you wanted to be able to search, there's only a number of slides here, so you probably don't need that on something this small, but there's all kinds of different things. You can change the colors and everything else, but I have that set up already how I want, but just showing you that is something. If anything, I would just say make sure that you have this name updated, because like if you have like, template or something like that, it's going to end up looking like that, right? It'll show up at the top, and obviously you don't want to have that happen. So anyway, publishing, you click on the Publish tab. There's a few different things. So Review 360, we're going to create a new version real quick because I already have this. If you've noticed one thing, I like to just kind of keep things simple as far as like copy pasting, and I forgot to actually save this into the folder ahead of time, so bear with me here as I find the proper course where it needs to go. Let's see here. Okay. Okay, so all I'm doing here is just naming the file, saving it to where I want to save it to. Anyway, what I was trying to say is, like, I like to go into this, and because I normally would have had this saved already, but I didn't. But I just like to copy the name. So if you hit Save As, you can copy the name. And then once this saves, this will help us in our publishing. So it probably doesn't look like it saved me any time here because I forgot to save it ahead of time. But it is a lot quicker than typing, you know, especially if like confusing like naming, you know, formatting and whatnot. Actually, sorry, we need to create a new one. So we're just going to create a brand new one. It's going to be named what I just saved it as. And we're going to hit publish. And then this is pretty cool if you haven't used this before, because this is, again, this is the area that will allow you to share these finished products or projects with shareholders. And so it can take a little bit of time, especially with video, as it encodes the video. But if you, it'll start going pretty quickly. And then we'll also take a look at how to publish for an LMS, like publish to a SCORM file, which will get it into like mobile format, which will get it into you know, basically just the HTML5 format that your work is probably using to publish these into just about any LMS. So and it does all of that. As you can see on the screen here, there's other different versions. There's even a Microsoft Word version. And what that does is it kind of creates like a PowerPoint version. It wouldn't really work well in this project because it's video where the timeline's moving left to right. But if you just had a set of static screens, like it would actually work pretty well for like these, you know, fourth phase, third phase, and so on. You could publish it as a Word doc. So if you had someone who's like, I don't like using Rise, I'm confused by links, you could send them that Word document and they could look through it like that or something like that. But so again, there's lots of different options. I haven't used like CD. Video, of course, would just publish it as a video. So you could obviously just do that as well. So like for instance, if your LMS is having trouble, like I know some like Blackboard sometimes can cause issues with inserting a media, like a SCORM file within something that like it doesn't like to share space, for lack of a better explanation, and so it might want to be on its own page. But maybe if you exported it as a video, it would just play a little bit nicer with the actual LMS itself. So just little things to think about. So anyway, as that's going here, I would say if this video has been helpful, give me a like, maybe subscribe. I'm continuing to make videos here just as I progress and get more familiar with Articulate. I'm making these videos to help the team that I am working with and managing, because a lot of this stuff's new for some of the people on our team, of kind of like this system that we're using, or just kind of this process, and that's been really exciting and fun. And Articulate's got a bit of a steep learning curve for sure. But it's a really, really cool tool. So anyway, I'm going to click that link here, and now we're going to be able to see our actual product. And this is where you really want to make sure that you're proofing it, because I inevitably catch errors every time, and I won't do this here on the video, but I will just say, like, you'll want to really go through and kind of just play through this whole thing. I mean, checking that the slides are in the right order, or you know, is the closed captioning actually updated properly?
Spirit of inquiry of a nurse educator.
But this is what it looks like.
Evidence-based teaching in the spirit of inquiry. Faculty will need to display a spirit of inquiry about their teaching and learning practices. When faculty have a spirit of inquiry, they are raising questions and examining existing teaching and learning practices. Faculty who have a spirit of inquiry are looking for creative ways to engage students in the learning process. As nursing faculty look to improve their teaching, they use evidence-based resources. Faculty should complete research to support any changes in teaching. Faculty who use evidence-based teaching use research to advance their teaching strategies. Orman described 4 phases of evidence-based teaching. 1. Questioning educational practices and identifying the need for evidence to guide teaching. 2. Searching for research studies and other evidence on educational practices. 3. Evaluating the quality of the evidence. 4. Deciding whether the finding applies to one's program,
Should switch here now.
students, and content in which one is teaching. During the first phase
So you
of
can see it
evidence-based teaching,
automatically
novice
switched.
faculty realize the importance of using evidence to support teaching practices. Nurses understand the value of using evidence in practice and begin to question the practices used in classes. At this phase, faculty are learning the teaching practices that are available and determining how to incorporate activities into the course. The second phase of evidence-based teaching is searching for research, not only in nursing databases, to answer questions. Faculty know that they miss relevant studies if they do not search multiple databases. Nurse educators need to become proficient with their database searches using keywords and Boolean indicators to ensure the best response. Searches can pull a lot of articles or a few. Nursing faculty need to have the foundation to be able to fine-tune their search to include.
One thing to check too is click through your timeline like this. Let me mute this here. Click through your timeline, because sometimes if you have layers or something not set up properly, this will create all kinds of issues, and usually it happens only with layers, not necessarily different slides. The reason it happens on layers is that the layer is still being instructed to follow the timeline of the primary slide that layer is a part of. And so if you haven't separated that out properly, you're going to have issues when you click this. It's going to just start to go crazy and not really respond. So if you see that, that's why that's happening.
They miss relevant studies if they do not.
So anyway, you can also just kind of click through.
With the third phase of evidence-based teaching, the faculty member must evaluate the evidence received during the search. Faculty examine the studies. The fourth phase of evidence-based teaching requires faculty to determine if the findings apply.
Did you catch my errors yet? There's a couple of them.
To their classroom setting. Nursing faculty have to examine the studies to determine if the participants were similar to the students in their class. Faculty, their practice that could
so
not.
You can click through this, making sure the transitions work,
Conclusion.
and they do.
Once the faculty determines to use the study,
again, that video is just going to be there, so we can.
Faculty become comfortable.
I'm mostly just making sure that the
when faculty
captioning
are
matches.
comfortable with their role, further continuous improvement.
5 seconds. 5 seconds, and that's it. So there you have it. Again,
Evaluating teaching effectiveness.
You can go through it. First off, my errors, if you didn't catch them, they're pretty easy. And as I hit play, I realized I forgot to change these. Right. So again, no matter how good of a designer you are, or how much you've done this, or for how many years, always proof your projects. Right. It's just like writing a paper, whether it's a dissertation or not. I mean, if you're a freshman in high school writing a paper, or you're someone who's working on their second doctorate program, proofread, right? Just take a chance, or take a second, I should say, to go through and make sure that all of those things are lined up and looking the way, because it's more than just typing and spelling and things like that, and grammar. When you're talking about video, most of your errors are going to be timeline related. They're going to be sometimes articulate related, like if you paste something in, and maybe instead of it being lined like that, it comes in like this, right? So it's just little things like that that you'll want to just keep an eye on. But those are the only errors that I saw. Again, we can save that up really quick, and we can just really quickly show you how to publish to the LMS, which is something, again, publishing to Review 360, a little bit different. That's just going to create a link where someone can go in and easily interact with it. You can interact with it. By the way, if you're curious to see like what these all look like, right, you can look and see like what does your project look like on a tablet, what does it look like on a phone, on a landscape. So you're able to really easily go through and see what different things look like, right? So, in case you didn't realize what those were. But anyway, publishing, LMS, I'm going to give it that same name that we copied earlier. Actually, I take that back. No, yeah, that's okay. And I just got to tell it where to save. So let me kind of dig around for my folder where I need to put it. And once you just have the folder, all you're doing is selecting the folder here, right? Naming it this, or whatever you want to name it, and then you're going to, whatever particular output that you want. SCORM 1.2 is kind of the default right now, that will publish to HTML5. And And this one usually goes a little bit slower than the Review 360, although since the videos have already been encoded, it might not take as long. So and that's it. And then if you wanted to zip it, you can easily click and zip it if you needed to. For some reason, it just creates a zip file and essentially the same folder you saved it to. So yeah, that's it. I hope this was helpful. Again, this was not the world's greatest video that we made. This was nothing more than a simple way to take a written lecture, make it visual in about the simplest way you can with using a couple different tools such as text on a screen, with closed captioning and narration, and using B-roll, we call it in the video industry, but essentially, video clips, right? So clips that would be kind of happening beyond like just your host or narrator that would be on the screen in this case. Since we don't actually have a host, I guess it's considered even A-roll, but additional video, right? And you're using those tools. So text on screen, video. But again, there's a ton of different things you can do, especially with triggers, especially with different states. I think the only state thing we even have in this whole thing, if you're curious about states, is on this particular thing. You may have noticed on the title. Where's it at? Sorry, on this title, there's a little icon here, and that's just part of the state. So on this particular graphic, what I've done is just loaded in the little symbol there. I forget what it's even called now, but loaded that symbol in. It's actually part of this thing now, so as I move that around, it travels with it. So again, lots of other things. That's a whole separate tutorial. If you're struggling with articulate storyline, be patient. There is a learning curve. It looks so much like PowerPoint. It's a lot different. It's a lot more challenging, but it's also a lot more rewarding, and it can do a heck of a lot more than PowerPoint can. So again, I hope this was helpful. Subscribe to the channel. Give me some feedback if you'd like. This was completely live. It was completely unscripted. There were some errors that were happening along the way, and that's part of the process. I think it's important to see all that stuff. So again, the idea here is just to share how you could use a simple template to create a simple video from a SME lecture. So I'm Mike Adamski. I hope this helped everyone. See you next time.